working on the robot and need to fix a few things. This video will walk you through those things. Notice that our intake at the moment cuts into the bumper. That's no good. There's also a gap between the back of the intake here and the bumper, and the two are supposed to rest on each other there. And there's another problem. If I rotate this, you can see in the back here, let me rotate a little bit more for you, that as you start to raise the intake, the plate cuts into the swerve drive. When we start, we're going to have to be something like this. The edge of our intake has to be within the frame perimeter. And so that's great, but when we do that, this edge of the intake sticks out past the frame perimeter. And so if we left like this, the robot would not pass inspection. So let's fix all of these parts or all of these issues. First, I'm going to get this back down to roughly 0. First issue I'm going to fix is the height of the intake. So if I try grabbing this yellow plate and moving it, I cannot lift it up and down because it's been fastened to the hex shaft here. I can't move the hex shaft because the hex shaft has been fastened to a bearing, and that bearing's been fastened to this post. One of the things I find a little confusing when I'm doing this is how do I get to what I need to change? In this case, what I need to change, I think, is where this hole is on this post. So I'm going to click on that post and right-click on it and switch to 1x2 intake mount. Here's the part, and it looks like sketch 2 here is the one for the holes. I'm going to end editing this number, but I realize now that I'm here that I did not check how much I need to raise it. So let's go back to the right view. I'll click on this and we'll rotate until we're at, we've got that level. And let's measure the distance between the bottom of the plate here, and the top of the bump here. I'll click the measurement tool. Let me rotate this around a little bit. Onshape is calculating a bunch of numbers for us. I think the Z one is the vertical one, and that's the one I want, and that is 0.322 inches. So that's rotate just a touch more here, we might be able to see it better. Yep, you can see there's the marking of the distance. We need to raise that up by 0.33 inches. So let's go back to the post, edit the sketch. Don't know if there was any significance to the original measurement that was in there, so I'm just going to put mine in as an addition, and I'm going up a touch higher than 0.33. So that moved the hole. Save that. And if we go back to the assembly, now the plate is sitting on top of the bumper. There's actually a slight gap there that I can see. Okay, so that's one thing fixed. Next thing, let's close up this gap between this edge of the intake and the front of the bumper here. First, I'm going to start by measuring that distance. I click on those two lines, and there's several distances shown here. So let's check these. Let's try Y is the green one, and I see this green dashed line here. And so I think that is the distance measurement I'm looking for. Right now the gap is 0.633 inches. I'd like to reduce that to something like 1/8 of an inch. It's fine if there's a touch of a gap here maybe, but we don't want it huge. 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch. Off camera here, I'm writing down what this number is. 0.633 is the one that I want to reduce that to something quite a bit smaller. Okay, I've written that down. Now, how am I going to do that? So there's two ways I could approach this. I could leave the shape of this plate the same and shift the attachment of the intake to the robot body to the left by 0.6 inches. That would close that gap. I can't move the plate itself because the plate's attached to the hex is attached to the bearing's attached to the post here, and the post is in turn fastened this red bar. So if I wanted to take this approach and move that back, the concern I would have about that is that it's going to be really easy to attach this the way it is right now with one of these bars up against the other one. We can put end caps into these bars that have screw holes in them and attach it that way, or we can put on right angle brackets between the two of them and attach them that way. There's several ways to attach this if it's right up against the bumper or right up against that red bar there. And if I move it back, it's just going to be harder to attach. So I think I'd like to leave this where it is. And that means that instead, I need to edit the drawing for this plate so that this hex shaft is 0.6 inches to the right. I'll do the same trick I did before. Click on the part I want, go to switch to side view official copy one. And let's see, there's several sketches here. I'm guessing it's the side plate sketch that I want. So click on that and edit it. So there's tons of measurements here. More than one of them are related to this hex shaft. Notice, and you can see a good example here, if you look at the 5.875, that's sort of a bold white. The 4.875 is grayed out. You can add as many dimensions as you want to the drawing. If there's several dimensions you're interested in, the ones that you can change are these ones that are white. It turns out this is the separation between the hex and the back of this. So we want to make this, I think it was 0.633 inches smaller. Forgot the minus sign, so I'll subtract that. But I'd like to have a small gap there, so I'm going to add on 1/16 of an inch. And when I do that, the hex shaft is moved. This might also help with our plate is hitting the swerve drive problem. Let's see, save that and go back to the overall view. That's nice, right? I'm right up against the bumper now. Let me just double check. It looks like I might have gone a little bit too far. Yep, I'm inside the bumper. I don't want that either. Let's go back to the drawing. And instead of adding a 16th, I'm going to add, well, I was going to add an eighth, but let's make it 3/16. Minus that, plus 3/16. There we go. Let's go see if that fixed it. You're still in there a little bit too much. Oh, let me check whether or not I've got this rotated, I bet. Let's get this level. And there we go. The issue really was that I had it turned a little too much. You can see there is a slight gap here. The fillet edge here presses into the bumper a bit. That I'm not too worried about. The bumper corner isn't actually a sharp corner like that. Now that we've made those changes, let's try rotating this and see if our problem's any better. So we're still hitting the swerve drive there and really digging it into it there. And once I rotate this, so the top part up here is within the frame parameter. We still have a bit sticking off here. Let's see if I can measure some of this stuff. In this case, let's measure the distance between that and that. So this big distance here is the horizontal distance between those. That's fine. But we also want to change the front to back distance that I think we want to change of 0.02 inches. I don't need to take a lot off there, but I need to take some off. Write that down somewhere, 0.028. Then I'd like to also figure out how much we need to shave off the bottom of that. But I am going to make the bumpers transparent for a moment so I can get a better look. Whoops. I accidentally had that plate selected too. I didn't want to do that. Let me adjust the bumper transparent. And then see if there's a good way for me to get a measurement here. I guess what I could do is check the edge of this hex to the top of the swerve drive. That's a side-to-side shift. I don't care about that. I think I want the Z shift. That's 2.7 inches. It looks like is that vertical distance. Oh no, sorry, 2.27, 2.3. Actually, I'm gonna round down. 2.25. So 2.25. We want to shorten that distance down to something like that. Yeah, let me get rid of the transparency, and then let's go back and take a look at this drawing again. And if we're lucky, there's a measurement here that we can just change. It looks to me like this is part of what's setting that distance. Let's see, I think I wanted that to be more like, what was it, 2.25? So let's try that. Uh-oh, that broke something. So let's undo that. Great. My hunch is that this is the dimension that's conflicting with that. So I'm going to delete this for a moment. Set this one to 2.25. You know what? As long as we're changing it, take it way down to 2. That's still 2 inches. We need to come back and finish constraining this, but I'm going to save that for a moment. Let's go back and take a look at how we're doing. We're no longer sticking out the front. That's awesome. And we are no longer hitting the swerve drives. Let's just rotate this through the full range of motion that we actually expect. Let me turn to the right here because I want to make sure that this front edge doesn't clip the bumper. It doesn't. And then when we're down here level, again, we're fine on top here. I'm not too worried about that cut, but I am, I think, going to close up this gap a little bit. I'm happy with the way that we're clearing the other parts. So let me switch to the side view on this and let's edit the sketch again. The last thing that we need to nail down, or it should be sufficient if we once again specify the distance between here and here. That's what was in there before. Let's try dimensioning again from here to there. And I'm just going to leave that distance, whatever it is. It's not a critical distance there. I just need to lock things down. And then the other thing I wanted to change was I wanted to bring this back a little bit closer to the bumper. In fact, you can see here roughly where the bumper should be is this dotted line. So I'm going to make that 2/16, bring it back just a touch. I'm going to go back to 1/16 and we'll see how that looks. Back to the robot drawing. Zoom in. Okay, so we have a tiny gap there. We have a tiny gap up here at the top. We can maybe bring this in a little bit. I think I am going to change the radius of this a bit. Don't know that we need to do that, but we're here. Let's fix that up a bit. I'd click sketch once again. No, I'm sorry. The sketch just has a right angle here. It was the fillet here where I changed radius. If I draw it out that way, it makes it worse. If I go back this way, this is going to be a little better. We'll end up cutting this piece out of polycarbonate anyway, so we're not going to end up getting that cut exact. And let's go back. I like that we're not cutting in there as much. We still have the slight gap between the bumper and the plate, and I'm comfortable with resting on the bumper on top there. So to sum up, what we did was we figured out what the problems were, and then one by one we went through and fixed each of the issues. In each of the cases, it wasn't obvious right away what we were going to need to change, but in both of these cases, it was going back and modifying a part. We modified this upright so that the hole was in a different place, and then we made a couple of changes to this plate so that it was in the position we want when it's on the bumper.